This is Art Television.
So now, we usually give a talk for about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. And one of the reasons for that is because these talks are never prepared. They're worse than that. I don't know what I'm going to talk about in the next 45 minutes. But you may have noticed that I look at you when I start contemplating giving a talk to get some feelings of what's necessary from you in your life, how you can be of service. Because that's what a talk is. It's just me giving to you whatever I can. And one of the things which you have noticed, there's so much fear in today's world. Fear in people. And some of that fear is one of the biggest causes of stress. Because you're afraid, you can't relax. Relax to the max. You know that I should be really afraid. According to the psychologists, the most scary thing you can ever do is to give a talk in public. This is worse than public. This is being recorded and streamed live around the whole world. But instead of feeling scared, you've got this wonderful feeling that you're having an opportunity to give. As a Buddhist monk over all these years, you started to see things in different ways. Instead of a duty, instead of a burden, it's this opportunity to give. It's weird, but when I first even became a monk, I always thought that the busyness, the burdens, the doing, the cleaning, the helping out, look after even just the chores of a monastery, I always thought they were a burden. My main purpose was to sit down, cross my legs and just bliss out in meditation. But later on I changed my attitude so many ways thanks to having a good teacher. And one of the ways I changed was to value service, value the opportunity to give, value the opportunity to give my energy for somebody else. And so, first of all, I would say thank you to each one of you for giving me the opportunity to serve this evening, to give a talk. It's not a burden at all, it's a great privilege, thank you. And it's the same any other work you can do. Unfortunately, because I'm a senior monk, it's just so hard to do services. Even to open the door for somebody. People think I'm just joking. No, I just want to do that. I care for you. Even little things like, even many years ago, I really tried my hardest to help out in the monastery kitchen after lunch by helping wipe the dishes. And I remember going in there wasn't that many people around to help wipe the dishes. I thought, well, I'm free, I can do that. And what happened, I went in there, picked up a tea towel, and people looked at me. They never said anything. I remember one of the Thai ladies grabbed a tea towel and pulled it away from me. What are you doing now for? I said, Ajahn, probably go upstairs and talk Dhamma to somebody. Why can't I just enjoy just serving other people? And you get so much happiness from that, doing a service to somebody else, cleaning something up, making sure it's, for example, the people you live with, making them a cup of coffee or tea in the morning, just as they like it. Many, 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 many times I remember one of the monks I was with said, I really love a cup of tea in the morning or a cup of coffee. We used to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning in that monastery, 3 a.m. in the morning. I looked at him and said, I'll get you one. And I did. I managed to find some coffee from somewhere, get up about 2 o'clock, because in those days, no electricity. So I had to get some wood and light a fire at 2 o'clock in the morning to boil some water to make him a cup of coffee. And it wasn't his birthday or anything. I enjoyed doing that. I still remember it. So I went to his hut at 3 o'clock in the morning, banged on the door, said, "Good morning, cup of coffee for you." And you know, I didn't feel tired. In fact, said I felt this beautiful, pure energy of giving to others, serving for others, doing something which was a little bit more. And I first learned that, I must admit, and being a monk, one of the things we do, you see how simple our clothes are. I may say simple, but I just discovered, of course she's not here today, I discovered these are new glasses. Somebody looked at my old glasses and said, "Oh, they're just really old." And they were old, granted that. I'll get you some new glasses. So a couple of weeks ago they took me to the opticians and they just did the test and changed the lenses and just got these glasses. But she just gave them to me. I never chose them. And I found out they're Gucci glasses. Oh my goodness, Ajahn Brahm, you're really getting fashionable now. They are. Okay, never mind. I never chose them, but I better be careful when people get me these things. You know, some years ago, one of these really nice disciples, they're probably listening, from Penang, and they decided for my birthday to give me a pen, because I sign lots of books. I don't sign checks or anything, but books, yeah, I sign a lot of those. And so it makes it easier to sign books. It was a really nice pen, probably the best little biro pen I've ever had in my life. But then when I took it to sign some books in Singapore, one of my disciples saw that and said, "Ajahn Brahm, do you realize that that is a Mont Blanc pen?" I don't know. I don't watch adverts on TV. I don't know what's what. I said, "It's a really good pen. It really works." But apparently it's a status symbol. So that didn't last very long. I had to give that up, auction it or something for the nuns' monastery. But as a monk, you look at things in a totally different way. It works, that's good enough. But anyway, on this particular occasion, our robes. And we try and keep things as simple as possible. So these robes we make ourselves. In the old days anyway. Especially I remember hours and hours and hours, actually days, just cutting this out of white cloth and then sewing it all together in this particular pattern which monks have to make the robes out of, and then dyeing it. And of course there was no sort of chemical dyes, it all had to be natural dyes. And the dye we used to use was from the jackfruit trees. There were so many jackfruit trees in the forests of Thailand, and when one fell down, or a branch fell off, they would come and offer it to a monastery, and we would keep it there. When we wanted to make some dye, we'd get a machete and chop it up into little chips. Of course, even chopping it up, we had to get that machete and sharpen it. You had to learn all these skills of how to sharpen machetes on a stone, and learn how to chop it properly so you didn't chop your fingers off. You got so many deep cuts at times. But anyway, and once we got that wood from the jackfruit tree, we'd have to boil it and boil it and boil it to get the sap out, which was the dye. When we got the sap out, actually when boiling it, we please, I need to go into detail because otherwise you wouldn't appreciate the story and the meaning behind it afterwards. Because actually even to get the water from a well, there's no taps to open up. We had to learn just how villagers would take the water from the well, which was a bucket on a bamboo pole. There's a little hook on the end of the bamboo pole, and you lower the bucket into the well and scoop it up. Many times I dropped my bucket into the well. But if you dropped the bucket into the well, you had to climb down and rescue it afterwards. It was a long way down. And sometimes there were snakes in that well. So, it was not an easy job. You're always kind to snakes. That's the other thing you learn from life. You had to do that. So how can you do that and not get bitten by these venomous snakes? You always, when you were going down, you made sure you were kind to them. Maybe just move to a different part of the well. And by being kind to the animals around you, you never got bitten. All those years, 9 years I was in Thailand, there were so many snakes there. And they were all dangerous. I was told that this was just an approximation. It was like almost like a metaphor. There's 100 species of snake in Thailand. 99 are venomous. If they bite, you're in big trouble. If not dead, but just very seriously injured. And the 100th species will strangle you to death. They're all dangerous. But we never got bitten, never sort of got sick because of those, because we're always kind and sensitive. How would a snake feel if you trod on it? Of course they get upset, so you make sure you don't tread on it. How would a snake feel, if you tried to flick it away somewhere? Be really fed up with you. So we made sure that we're really kind to the animals with which we lived. And of course they never, ever, ever harmed you at all. And that's the same, what I learned from that is how to be kind to human beings as well. Now how would you feel, if I came in here and just tried to convert you into being I don't know what. Of course you don't try and convert people or change people. You care for people, you want to encourage them, inspire them, no matter who they are. That's what I was saying to somebody yesterday at the funeral service. And it's wonderful just to see, in those years I was very active of trying to make Buddhism here in Western Australia, actually in Australia, just be a very kind and friendly sort of path to everybody. To the point that we went out to the Catholic monks at New Norcia years ago. And of course there's a bond there between us because we're all monks. And the abbot at the time, this monk Abbot Placid, he went there so many times and became a good friend. He also had a great sense of humour. I don't know if you've seen the New Norcia Monastery. It's one of the oldest buildings in the state of Western Australia. So when he was showing me around one of the first times, I had to ask him, I said, in this monastery, it's been here for so many hundreds of years, are there any ghosts in your monastery? And he said, well, according to the Catholic tradition, we don't believe in ghosts. I said, really? He said, yes, we don't believe in ghosts. And then I told him, I looked him in the eye and said, I think I poked him as well, what about the Holy Ghost then? And he, I led him into a joke and he fell for it. So we were very, very friendly. We had a sort of connection there. Even though he was a Catholic, we tried to find that bridge between our traditions and the goodness in each one of us. And of course at the end of that, what happened was, that when he passed away, he made sure, or the other monks made sure, that I also gave a speech at his funeral mass. I'm a Buddhist, I'm not a Catholic, but they respected me enough that I could actually go there as a friend. And they said just how much that relationship meant to him. And this is how we can make those bridges between people. I learned that, how you can be kind to snakes. I'm not saying that Christians are snakes. Buddhists are snakes or whatever. Of course not. But what you learn from that is just how you can build those bridges. So things which are different, never feel they're threatened. I did the same over at St. George's Cathedral. I used to go there for some interfaith service once a year. And I got to know sort of the people there, especially the old dean there, John Shepherd. He also became a really good friend. And I do remember that he trusted me so much that one of the highlights of my interfaith career, if you like, in Western Australia, in Perth, I don't know how many of you were there at the time, they invited me to give the sermon on a Sunday Eucharist, which is the holiest day of the Anglican week. And he's a dean, he's very highly educated, and he did his research, and he did tell me that it was the first time in 2,000 years a non-Christian has given the sermon at a Eucharist. a full service. And I was very proud of that. Not because, it was something famous, because you've broken barriers between peoples, and there was something at the heart of, many things we don't agree with in spirituality, and terrible things which have been done, by different religions, Buddhists included. But there's something beautiful and deep and wonderful at their heart, and that's what we were focusing on. And that was one of the highlights of my life here in Perth, I must admit, that Eucharist service. First of all, I remember this because yesterday we did a little movie here, and the first thing I asked them when I came in, do you need to do makeup? We didn't need to do makeup here, but just before that big event at St George's Cathedral, I think Channel 7 or Channel 9, I forget which one, found out about it, and they wanted to do an interview, a live interview for the evening news the night before. And I had to wear makeup. It wouldn't have been so bad, but Ajahn Brahmali, he came with me. And when they were doing makeup in the makeup room, he was making faces at me. He was really naughty. That's why I like him so much. But after that, the event itself, any of you were there at the time? It's about 20 years ago now, I think. Anyone? Oh, you were there, Hokkien, yeah. You remember that it was packed. The whole sort of cathedral, it was standing room only. We didn't know who was a Buddhist, who was a Christian, or who was what. Sitting next to each other, cheek to cheek, jaw to jaw. We didn't care. I gave a nice little sermon. If you'd have seen me when I was a student with long hair, rebellious, I'd have never thought I'd give a sermon in a Christian cathedral, ever. And it's a nice one. So beautiful friendship, which means we weren't scared of one another. This place here you're sitting in, you know where this came from? There's a community hall over there, was an Anglican church. This was their car park. And when we wanted to buy it, they said, well, we wouldn't give it to many places or many other different religions, but you Buddhists are friendly. Yeah, we'll sell it to you. It's nice. You've got that friendship there, that mutual respect. And as I'm going to go on to this, it's not what I thought of talking about tonight, but I also mentioned that I made lots of friends in the different religions, as well as obviously the Buddhist religions. That's my main focus. This is just like a part-time hobby. And I remember just going to an interfaith conference. And that was a time when there was this gentleman at the conference. I never expected someone so senior in the Catholic Church to be present. He was a Jesuit, Father Frank Brennan. And if ever you Google him, you find he's very, very highly regarded intellectual. So much so that one of the governments years ago asked him to head the committee to add a human rights addition to the Australian Constitution. So this was an intellectual high flyer. So when he put his hand up and asked a question, you're always open to questions. And I'm really sorry you don't have time in the evening to answer everybody's questions. But it's the questions which push you to find deeper inspiration and truth about life. So his question was to me, I was presenting with Abbot Placid, we were presenting together, we were good mates. And his question to me was, what is a Buddhist idea of God? And it was a very good question, which sometimes you ask many times, but sometimes I just tell jokes, or answer with a joke, my character. But this time I realized with someone as intellectually powerful as this Jesuit scholar, a joke wouldn't get you anywhere. I had to be more serious. And so I quoted the man next to me, this Abbot Placid, who was the head of New Norcia Monastery, Benedictine. One of the nice things about the Benedictines, they were independent from the Catholic Archbishop of Perth. They ran their own show, which means they were free to think. I always respect that. Even here, the monks at Bodhinyana Monastery, the nuns, it would really disturb me if I found they all thought the same. It's one of those sayings, when everybody thinks the same, no one thinks at all. We're afraid. And anyway, many conversations I had with Abbot Placid, I regarded him as a good friend. And he once said to me, he said, as one of his fundamental beliefs in his life, and please excuse me, some Buddhists get upset when I say this, but he said, one of his fundamental beliefs is everybody is searching for God. And I said, I don't agree with that as such, or not on its ordinary way of interpreting it, but I respect my friend. When you respect others and listen to them, then you may be able to find out exactly what they mean, or find out something even more important. I said, I'm going to start from that. My friend, who I've known for many years and respect, this is what he keeps saying to me. So, I said, what am I searching for in my life? As a Buddhist abbot, a meditator. What are you searching for? What drives you in this life? What do you want? And what do you want to give to others? And straight away, I said, respect. You want to be respected. No matter who you are, no matter what stage of your life you're in. You may be old, you may be disabled. You may be in some weird religion which no one else understands. Wouldn't a little bit of respect be wonderful for you? And there's so many people who are marginalized, stigmatized, people who are mentally or emotionally different. I always have to stop myself there, because I was trained as a young man to say mentally disabled or emotionally sort of sick. And that's a terrible word to say. I just stop myself. That's not true. You're different, that's all. And don't such people seek for respect? What happens if you give them respect? Old people, sick people, whoever you are. So you want respect. Indigenous people, what are they searching for? To be respected. So you give respect. And obviously like kindness, love, friendship, truth, peace, comfort, freedom, safety. So if you wrote a list out, what are you searching for in life? What would you want in life? I'd write all those words down, and many other concepts as well. I want to be understood. I want to have some freedom to live my life in the way I feel. So after a while, I said to this fellow, well, that must be what God is then. Freedom, respect, the ability to love another and love yourself. Love yourself as well, that's an important thing to do. The ability to find some peace, some happiness, some joy, laughter. That's why many people come here, apparently, because when they go home they ask, what did Ajahn Brahm, they don't actually ask, what did Ajahn Brahm teach tonight? What joke did he say tonight? So I said, well, why not say that is what Buddhists believe in as God. Respect, peace, truth, stillness, peace, joy. And I remember Father Fatma said, oh, that's a pretty good answer. Yeah, I can live with that. What it was doing, it was making bridges, taking things much further than, but I believe in this or I believe in that. And that's actually one of the great goals, to take these ideas and take them further. But anyway, do it a little bit differently. And we don't have to have wars. When we realise this is what people are searching for, what they really need, what they worship. What do you worship? Sometimes people worship sports stars. Why? It's because sometimes those sports stars, they sacrifice so much and they do these incredible, out-of-the-world feats. And that really inspires people. Why? Because they do things which are different and meaningful. They push the boundaries. But instead of pushing the physical boundaries of life, pushing the emotional, social, spiritual boundaries of life. And you know you push them in the right direction when it creates this beautiful sense of harmony and peace afterwards. By the results, you should know them. So little by little, we can create this different way of looking, which actually solves much of the problems in our modern world. So going back to the story of making robes, so much hard work making a robe, 3 or 4 days of hard work, and on this occasion there was 3 monks making their robes, which they had to make themselves before their ordination as monks. In these days we just get them out of the cupboard. And they'd been working for 2 nights without sleep, about 48, 60 hours or something. And the rule was that they had to do it by themselves. But you know what are rules for anyway? There's always the rule of compassion and kindness. Is more important than any other rule. So much so that we have, and this is true, I have our monastic rules. This is not the case. Venerable Jayako, you've seen those rules. The number 1 rule in the monastery is kindness, compassion. We've written that down in the old rules of the monastery. So, after the evening chanting, these 3 monks have been working their butts off for 2 or 3 days. And so most of the monks have gone back to their huts. I went to the dyeing shed and said, guys, I know this is against the rules, but I'll look after the dyeing pot this evening. You go back and take a rest. I broke the rules. And I looked after the dyeing pot all night for them. When it came, the bell went at 3 o'clock. Those monks came back to the dyeing shed. And I wasn't tired. I never told any other monks. Those 3 monks knew. I went back to the morning chanting and meditation. And the weird thing was, I hadn't slept all night. And I was meditating there just so easily and so much energy and so peacefully. And the chanting was full voice. And when I was on alms round, there was no tiredness at all. And I had to ask one of the other monks on the way back from the alms round, what on earth is happening? We don't take any drugs, didn't have any tea or coffee or anything, but I have all this energy. Why? And they said, because you helped other people. Because you were kind. And that was one of the first times I realized that when you really help and serve selflessly, you really are kind. And those poor monks, have you ever been without sleep for 2 or 3 days? And someone comes up and says, I look after the dye pot, you go to bed. They never argued. They ran. Before I changed my mind. And because I gave them some sleep that night, I got all the energy back. It's the law of karma, but it's actually doing it yourself and finding out it is true, it works. And that's why a lot of times if I do extra work, extra business, it depends what it's for. All of you come and do the plumbing for Kusala Vihara. You know, sometimes you do extra work, you don't get paid for that. But then you find out that afterwards you feel so good and energized. It's almost not like work at all. What I'm saying there is sometimes we see things in a totally different way than you're taught in this world. You think that giving it's tiring. It's not. It's energizing. It makes you feel good. And I don't know how many times I've said this, but those people who have depression in our world, come and do some work for some of the monasteries or the nunneries. Serve. And you find you're doing something beautiful and wonderful. This is powerful stuff we're doing here. And it means really helping people and helping yourself. So some energy, you feel great, you feel good. Sometimes on Saturday mornings, that's tomorrow morning, we go on arms round. When we come back, I never wear any shoes on arms round or socks. And actually the feet don't get dirty because it's a very clean, the Perth streets. But nevertheless, it's tradition when I come back that you get your feet washed. And sometimes people wash those feet and they say, what are you doing it for? I'm old enough to wash my own feet, honestly. But when you do that, how do you feel afterwards? Wow. You get a boost of happiness. What you're doing is seeing things in a totally different way than what it should be happening in this world. And that really suits my rebellious nature. I don't know about your rebellious nature. Some people, well, how come you're rebellious, Ajahn? Well, you're a senior monk. Aren't you supposed to behave? Of course I am. The heart of the rules are rebellious. Even Ajahn Chah, I do remember I was there at the time when Ajahn Chah started to become famous. And so the senior monks in Bangkok sent a delegation to check him out. What was he doing? And I realized, well, he's actually keeping the rules and he's also inspiring people. And that was the most important. There was something about his rebelliousness which actually taught people to be better human beings. And, of course, most religious teachers have been rebellious. In other words, seeing things in a different way, and having the courage to speak out. This is a different way of doing things in life. Learning how to be simple. This afternoon I gave a talk on meditation at Woodside. The big company in Perth. And I said, and it's honest, I live in a cave. And one of the people, the one who invited me, said, yeah, I went to a retreat at Jhana Grove and we had a visit to the cave. It's true, it's only a tiny cave, but that's where I live. It's pretty rebellious living in a cave. I don't think it actually meets with the council regulations. If there are regulations, because they've got regulations about many things, but then about caves. But however, what a beautiful place it is to live in a cave. And I'm really senior now, 47 years working as a monk. So sure you could get something better accommodation after all those years, all those hard work. Still sleep on the floor. Isn't that true, Venerable? And so many times people say, we can get you a bigger mattress and get a proper bed. It's unhealthy for you. No way. You know why I like sleeping on the floor? Because I can never get up on the wrong side of the bed. And at night time, sometimes people don't sleep well at night because they're afraid of rolling out of bed. I just roll and roll and roll and roll until I hit one of the walls. There's no drop there. And the nicest part of living in a cave is 2 doors. And so when I close both of those doors, I can't hear anything outside. So the monks might be going crazy, there might be a bushfire, we might get invaded by bikies. I'm not quite sure what might happen. But when I'm in my cave, I don't care. It's my time off. You're really at peace. Actually, I never tried it, but I don't think you get you won't be able to get a signal from the internet there at all. So it's just this free zone, just being like a person, like an old monk in the old days, living in a cave, being so still and peaceful. It's a great place to meditate. I just put up so much energy in the meditation. But all of that time, one person asked me, but what would happen if you got sick in the cave? No one could hear you scream. Yeah, I'm a monk. Actually, I did get sick in the cave once. Really sick. You know that story. There was a story when I had, what's it called, food poisoning. Have you ever had food poisoning? As a monk, it's an occupational hazard, because we don't know what we're really eating. People say, this is very nice, so you put it in your mouth and see what happens. It is true. So this time it was really bad food poisoning. And I didn't know it until you get into your cave and you shut the door, do some meditation, then it starts to come on you. And food poisoning, you have cramps. And the cramps are very, very painful. Ah! I usually give this story when I see that people are falling asleep listening to me. Ah! It wakes them up. But that was actually true. Ah! Involuntary spasms are incredibly painful if you had food poisoning. And there was no medication in my cave. And actually, no one could hear me screaming inside. It was real. And I thought, well, if I manage to get to the door, there's 2 doors I have to open, and crawl down to where the nearest phone was, which was maybe 100 meters away. And it was behind a locked door, the phone. And if you called an ambulance, the time before we called an ambulance when people were very sick, they say, where is it? Ah! What's the address? Ah! It takes about half an hour when you get the message through to get the ambulance. Well, I'd be dead by then. But as a monk, you just learn how to do things differently. And it's amazing what you can do. So you had these cramps in your tummy, and instead of trying to get rid of those very painful contractions in your tummy somewhere, you do things differently. You let them be. You open the door of your heart to those incredibly painful feelings. You've got no choice. Why not let them be? Fighting them makes them worse. And it's a wonderful experience. I keep repeating this because it inspired me at the time and it inspires me now what can be done. You just watch those cramps, really, really painful. And by being kind to them, letting them be, okay, the door of my heart's open to you. I can't get rid of you, so you can be with me. You're going to teach me something. They really taught me a wonderful lesson, not to be afraid, but be kind instead. I was kind to those feelings. And every time, the next cramping session which came on, every minute or two, it was a little less painful, and less painful, and less painful, and less painful. And it was half an hour, 40 minutes, 20 minutes, I can't remember what, but mostly half an hour. And it totally disappeared. It got so small, it vanished. And that was the end of my food poisoning. Half an hour, all gone. And it's not just all gone, it was just inspiring what you can do. Real food poisoning, how it can disappear in 30 minutes. It's pretty incredible. And I'm an honest monk, that happened. And that's why I sometimes say personal experience, because I know exactly what happened, I felt it. And what it did meant you weren't so afraid anymore of serious pain. I'm certainly not afraid of just being alone in my cave and getting very sick. I know how to handle it. You don't try and get rid of the sickness or the pain. You just be with it. It teaches you wonderful lessons when you learn and you have the guts to listen and find out that what you're doing, reacting out of fear, there's other ways to react. So little by little you learn to deal with things in a totally different way. Even to the point where one of the books which I was inspired with, and we had in our monastery library in Thailand, just a group of monks, okay? We didn't have any nuns at that time, and that's disgusting, but that was the truth of the matter. At that time, we weren't allowed to have nuns. But anyway, we had a book on how to give birth. Crazy, wasn't it? And the reason we had this book about how to give birth was because it was controversial, doing things in a totally different way. It was rebellious, but it worked. They just, number one, they said, if you are pregnant, you know someone who's pregnant, please don't tell them labor pains. You're building them up to experience pains. Call them labor energies. And you may think that's a small thing, but that totally transformed just the birthing process. The energies, powerful forces going through your body. You know, because there were a bunch of hippies mainly, they did say, please excuse me for this, but it was funny, the biggest shit of your life. All this stuff goes on. Your kid's not a piece of, you know, but it was just like that powerful simile of things coming out of your body. And don't push. Just make it totally natural. Relax to the max. And it was a hippie community, basically. You know, the Summer of Love in 1968 in Berkeley. A few of them had got enough money, I'm not saying from where from, and they got a little community over in the Midwest somewhere, and they were doing these amazing new techniques of things like giving birth. And it really worked. And they had not just a husband and a doctor there, they had almost a whole community around the bedside. And every time there was a contraction, yay! They were clapping and cheering like it was a football match. And this wasn't a joke, because apparently the labours were so short. And sometimes some of the women, they wrote their articles afterwards in this little book. So it wasn't painful at all. It was incredibly beautiful. They just looked at this in a totally different way. Not as painful, but as power. You're giving birth. A being is coming into your life. This is incredible. Why just say this is painful? It's beautiful energy, it's powerful stuff coming through you. And I don't know, maybe anyone in the gynecology departments can please let me know, but they said that became a classic, throughout the world. There's just a bunch of hippies who managed to just change the way you look at things like birth. I always think that's one of the purposes of being a teaching monk. Making you look at your life in a totally different way. And the one I'd say that especially, this is an old one, but this is so important, about stress. I'll use a big one. You've heard this before. If you haven't, please practice it. It's marvelous. How heavy is this bottle of water? The longer I hold it, the heavier it feels. 1 minute, I'm in pain. Actually, 30 seconds, I'm in pain. It's really heavy. 1 minute, I'm in agony. 2 minutes, I'm a really stupid monk in a hospital case. What should I do when this gets too heavy to bear? Yeah, put it down. It's so simple. So I was telling all these workers in Woodside, I said, they're all really tired. They're stressed out, burnt out. What happens when you go to work and you come home, you're stressed out? You take it out on your kids, on your partner. Don't talk to me now, I've just been working all day, oh my goodness. Now I have to deal with this. And I think you all know that. You recognise that. Your partner comes home from work. They've been really trying hard to get a good job, to pay the bills and look after their family and save a bit for later on. And they come back, they're just exhausted and they're tired. chronically tired. You see that all the time when we hold retreats. First couple of days, people are meditating. Their heads are right down, falling asleep. There's nothing wrong with that. You're exhausted. You're tired. I remember just going to KL, and there's another conference, a day's conference. This was for youth. And there's maybe about 120 young men and young women there at the time. And then we asked them this question. It was a number of questions. We wanted to get some feedback. And that was, what is your most difficult emotion you have to deal with, between the ages of maybe 14 and 20? And it was a surprise, it was an eye-opener for me, when the clear winner in that answer, what's the most difficult emotion you have to deal with, was tiredness. And it opened my eyes, but it really saddened me. In your youth, you're already tired at 14. It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? You just ask your 14-year-olds all the stress they're going through. Trying to please their mum and dad, trying to please their teachers, trying to please their peer group, worrying about what they're going to do, in school or after school, just worrying whether they're going to actually be popular enough to find a partner in life, a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever. You may be sort of LGBTQIA+. And that's why, please, if you've got a kid who comes and tells you that they're LGBTQIA+, please give them a big hug, be kind to them. Life is so hard as a teenager. So much tiredness is the last thing they need is to be stigmatized by their mum and dad. Oh, that's just so gross. But anyway, the tiredness was there. Why? They don't know how to relax. I was fortunate. I learned my meditation when I was a teenager. Thank you. Because I learned how to relax. And I could enjoy my life. But anyway, learning how to put things down. I mentioned this at Woodside because I had to sort of justify my existence there. What's a Buddhist monk doing in a resource company? Should I be protesting? And of course that was that wonderful opportunity when I do really weird things. The keynote address, if you go to conferences, that's to set the tone of the conference. It's really important. And sometimes they get these really expensive people to give keynote addresses. And of course I gave the keynote address at the World Computer Conference in South Korea in 2019, I think it was. What am I doing there? I don't know that much about computers. But I gave the keynote address and it was very popular. And this is one of the things I said. Why are you all stressed out? Stress has got nothing to do with how much water is in this jar. It's your inability to put it down and rest, to relax. And just seeing it that way changes your whole perception of what is the cause of your stress. It's nothing to do at all with how much work you have to do. Honestly, I say that. I have a lot of work to do. I am a monastery spiritual director of this, spiritual dictator of that, spiritual advisor of something else. I know how to put things down, relax and rest. I always remember the time when I was at primary school. We'd have the classes, then we'd have recess, then have the classes again. That recess was really important. It's a recess where you learn how to relax and rest. Without that, your brain will not be able to absorb much information. We forget that ability. How can you just run a marathon, really fast, hour after hour after hour after hour after hour, without relaxing and resting? It's almost impossible. You try that. But instead we have these pauses, rests, relaxations at school, but we forget about that in life. When you go to real jobs, you have to work. From the time you get there, sometimes even through your lunch, until you go home at night, no wonder you're exhausted and tired and your standard of work goes down. You don't perform. Imagine what would happen if you had recess. That in your workplace the bell would go ding, 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 recess. And everybody would go out and have a cup of tea or coffee or kick a ball around or just don't do any work for 15 minutes. Or even better, like they do in Google headquarters in Mountain View, because I went there and sat in the meditation room, and in Facebook in Mountain View, I went there and sat in their meditation room. I was invited to go to Google, but Facebook found out, so they had to get me to go there as well. Keep it fair. And they do that because that allows people to relax. And their productivity goes up. You don't get so tired. Innovation happens. You see things in a different way. And you go home without any stress at all. Because you relax, you know how to relax. So in a modern world of tiredness, you don't have to have that tiredness. If you know how to let go and put things down, then when you pick it up again afterwards, it feels light, because your arm has rested. That's how we change the world. And of course, for those of you who've heard the story before, even this happened because I gave the first version of that story over in Queensland years ago at a conference, and it was the Australian newspaper picked it up, put it in their business section, and then eventually it went to US, and eventually it went into Harvard Business School. It's taught in Harvard Business School. And they never give me any credit for inventing that story. I don't care. Even I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but I was giving this at this Thai festival in Supreme Court Gardens or somewhere or around there. And anyway, the political member for Perth, I think Evangelina or something, and then she came up and gave her speech, and she said, I heard from a wise man that if you hold things up too long, you get a tired arm. And I went, that's my simile, I invented that. But it's very funny to hear it said, because they know it works. You can live a very productive, active, successful life with no stress at all. And also you find you're not so tired in life. And you find you have time for the people you love and care for. You're open to actually your spiritual life. You're not so exhausted. So you can enjoy the beautiful stars at Serpentine. If you live there, such a great joy after giving talks there. You walk back to your hut slowly. You look up in the sky and see the stars, they're gorgeous. Or see the sunsets. Or just listen to the rain pouring down on the trees or on the roofs. You're alive, enjoying nature, not struggling with her. That's a possibility. Why not? And that's as usual, I talk too much. So hopefully you enjoyed the talk this evening. I don't know even what the title would be, because I just made it up as I go along, as usual. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening.